Hello again, and welcome to my channel. My name is the Archivist, and in this video, I want to present to you the story recap and analysis of the Chalk Prince and the Dragon event. I separated the Albedo story quest from the event quest, even though they came out at the same time, because they're very different pieces of content that each require a special focus. You can't play this event's missions now, so this video can be used to keep up with the past events of the story. Before we get on with the video, I want to give a shout out to the narrator of this channel. He goes by the name of Abner Cakes and has done amazing work on this channel and other channels. I cannot thank him enough for his support. If you have some spare time, follow him on Twitter and catch up with him on his Twitch streams. And, if you like the sound of his voice, he's always looking for opportunities relating to his voice acting skills. You will find a way to contact him in the description of this video. And Archivist, thank you very much. Now, let's get this started. First of all, if you haven't watched the first video, make sure you do. In this video, we will skip over some of the stuff that was mentioned in the last one. I'll put a link on the screen and another one in the description for those that need to watch it. Now that we're all on the same page, let's keep on going. The first quest of the event starts with the Traveler and Paimon walking through the camp at the foot of the mountain. There, we run into Sucrose once again. Turns out, she's still dead set on discovering Albedo's secret. We understand Albedo's role within the Knights of Favonius. He mainly uses them for his own means, and they use him for their own meaning. But what about Sucrose? We don't really understand much about her and her motivations apart from her inherent curiosity and her alchemy knowledge. However, if you look at her more closely, she seems more connected to Albedo than we are initially led to believe. For example, they aren't completely human. Albedo, as we discussed in the previous video, is a homunculus, and Sucrose is a human-animal hybrid. They're both extremely intelligent alchemists obsessed with creating and modifying life, which means they're both into the art of chemia, which is what caused the cataclysm of Khaenri'ah. I believe the story is setting the similarities between these two characters to set up a potential adversarial relationship between them. The seeds of distrust have already been planted way before we entered the equation, so we need to keep an eye out in case things get out of hand, especially considering what we learned on the last quest regarding Albedo's dark nature. After talking with Sucrose, we enter the mountain and reach Albedo's camp. We find him there, studying and tinkering with a strange-looking sword. He greets us and immediately redirects the conversation to the sword. The sword looks weird. The eye that presides on the hilt gives it a creepy vibe, and you can see in those glowy purple lines that some strange magic is definitely running through the blade. Albedo tells us that there's a curse running through the sword, and that he needs our help to study it. We take the sword and we fight some standard slimes with it. After defeating them, some treasure hoarders recognize the sword and try to grab it from our very own hands. Of course, after defeating them, Albedo tells us the story of how he found it. Apparently, a small cell of treasure holders were smuggling some treasure outside the city. This sword was among their belongings. The sword went unnoticed for some period of time in some random Knights of Favonius storehouse until Albedo picked it up and performed some experiments on it. He also discovered that the sword was made by a mysterious blacksmith that created the sword and disappeared shortly after. However, that's not the most important part of the origin of the story. Albedo also tells us the story of how the sword was created from the remains of Durin. Durin was a dark dragon that fought both Venti and Dvalin before falling towards his death on the side of Dragonspine. Albedo speculates that the reason why Durin's body landed on the Wormrest Valley was to limit the effects of his corruption. We know that sometimes, corruption from demons and other evil creatures lives on, even after their death. This is the reason why the Yakshas of Liyue didn't live for too long despite being adepti of great power blessed with immortality. Apparently, this used to be a well-known fact during the Age of Gods, and many methods such as this one were used to contain the corruption of Teyvat. Knowing this, we can piece together the origins of the sword. Having easy access to the remains of such a powerful being, this mysterious blacksmith must have used parts of Durin to create the sword now known as the Festering Desire. As such, the corruption took hold of the sword and eventually found its way to the creator of such a cursed artifact of death. Karmic retribution, such as the one that afflicted the other Yakshas, caused the blacksmith to abandon and probably die somewhere within Dragonspine. He must have used a similar method to the one we used to build the Dragonspine spear. If you do not recall the process used to do it, we infused Durin's fangs with his corrupted heart deep within the heart of the mountain to create a similar weapon. Apparently, ordinary people cannot withstand the corrupted power of his weapon, and that is why this weapon can only be used by us, the only being on Mondstadt that was able to purge the corruption from Dvalin. Albedo, with the knowledge he just imparted on us, also entrusts the Traveler with the sword, hoping that he will use it in battle just so it can grow in strength. This is where the first quest of the event ends. We're left with an ominous taste in our mouth while we walk away with such a dangerous sword in our hands. Is he naive enough to think that this sword won't have a long-lasting effect on us? Or does he want to see some harm come our way? Maybe it won't affect us at all. After all, we're the most exceptional individual in Teyvat. Our deeds have saved countless lives. Our body has some interesting properties, to say the least. Is the potential knowledge or power that could be obtained by Albedo enough for him to risk the most important asset in all Teyvat? Or does he know something about ourselves that we don't? The next quest starts normal enough. We show him our progress with the sword, and he tells us to investigate some troubling signs he found recently. It turns out it was the treasure hoarders wanting to get the sword back. However, they're not the only ones trying to get a hold of the Festering Desire. After defeating the treasure hoarders, the Fatui enter the fight, guns blazing. They probably saw us waving it around the area and wanted it for their own. Apparently, the power of Durin used to be comparable to that of the Archons. A fraction of that power would surely attract the attention of some parties. I bet that they're not the only faction with their eye on the sword. While we dispatch the enemies that are ambushing us, Albedo makes an interesting discovery nearby. Apparently, the ley line flows differently in the area, and it has started to have an effect on the fauna. This seems like the perfect chance to experiment with the sword under special conditions. During the fight with the monsters, Albedo notices that the sword absorbs the power of the enemies, and every time this happens, a connection with Durin's remains happens. Are we slowly nurturing the old dragon back to life? Are we keeping his corrupted heart on life support? It's hard to say what the effect of our use of the sword is doing to the body of the beast. Albedo, thrilled with the prospect of new knowledge, leaves us to our other tasks. He has a plan in mind, but he needs to prepare in depth. The next task doesn't really illuminate us in that regard. We hear about Cyrus's plan of taking the recruits into Dragonspine to create in them a sense of adventure, which seems kind of counterintuitive to me, but who am I to question the branch master of the Adventurers Guild? After that, we resume our experiments on the mountain. During those events, Hillicurls ambush the group and steal Albedo's sketchbook. We chase a Hillicurl by foot and with the glider until we reach them and get them to give the notes back. During the fight, we notice that their tactics are evolving. It must be one of the side effects of Durin's corruption. After that, we go back to the camp and discuss the events that have just unfolded. Among other things, Albedo, the Traveler, and Paimon discuss the situation involving the sword and the corruption. Apparently, the remnants from Durin are disappearing because we're storing that power within the sword. This will come into play in the last quest of the event, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still have the fourth one to cover. In the next one, we bump into Sucrose sneaking into Albedo's camp in the mountain. She had some free time and came to investigate Albedo's secret. We show her the sword and test it out on some monsters like we've been doing for a while now. It's interesting to notice that Sucrose follows and remarks similar points to those expressed by Albedo. Even though she's not quite there in terms of skills, knowledge, and brilliance just yet, Sucrose has the potential to become a worthy successor to Albedo. That is not an easy feat, considering Albedo has had a long time to learn everything, had a very renowned master, had access to Khaenri'ah's technology in the past, and was bred by her master for the sole purpose of uncovering complex alchemy secrets. Sucrose also wonders how Albedo noticed the sword among the residue and trash in those warehouses. Paimon theorizes that it could be just a flash of brilliance, pure unadulterated luck, but that seems unlikely to me, especially considering what type of character Albedo is. The most likely answer to that question is that he recognized the energy or the influence from the sword as something created by Rhindaughter, his master. We will get into that topic soon enough when we reach the conclusion of the quest. After that, we run into trouble. Apparently, Reckless Palad followed Cyrus on his way to the mountain, and now he's lost and almost freezes to death. We fend off the Fatui attackers trying to get their hands on the sword in the middle of the chaos. After that, Albedo enters the scene, wondering why we caused such upset. Both the Traveler and Sucrose ask for forgiveness and vow to never cause such disruptions again while using dangerous materials such as the sword. However, they're still not out of danger. Reckless Palad sees the sword and tries to grab it, mistaking it for a heat source. Instead, he knocks it over and causes some dark energy to spill out of the sword, making a Cryo-Regisvine stump grow back to life and get enhanced capabilities. We defeat the Cryo-Regisvine in front of Albedo while he watches very closely. He must have been struck by inspiration, because after the battle, one of the first things he remarks on is the ability of the corruption to revive the plant. He calls that a valuable discovery before the ending of the quest. Now we enter the last quest of the event. Despite it being the shortest, it's the one with the most amount of lore. All the story threads introduced by the story quest and the event quest come into play, revealing something much more sinister happening. We meet Albedo once again at the camp. Having used the sword a lot and having absorbed energy from all around the mountain, the sword is brimming with Durin's life force. The traveler returns the sword to Albedo, but he chooses only to extract the energy from the sword, and he puts it in a crystal bottle. After that, he returns the sword to us as a reward for helping him obtain the thing that he was after. Then, the final revelation comes in the form of a small monologue. Let's watch it together.
This dragon's life force resonates with me. Not because it's a dragon, but because I am me. Rhine-daughter, Master. Is this your creation? The giant dragon Durin? Was the two of us meeting really a good thing?
Durin's life force resonates within Albedo, and Durin could have been created by Rhine-daughter. Now we have all the parts we need to piece the story of Durin together. The dragon might have been created in a similar fashion to Albedo as a synthetic life form. After getting corrupted by gold, he fought Venti and Dvalin. This battle turned fatal for him, and his body ended up laying in the area now known as Wormrest Valley in an effort by Venti to contain the corruption. After his death, an unknown blacksmith fashioned the Festering Desire and probably the Dragonspine Lance as well, before disappearing without leaving a trace. The Festering Desire was lost in the annals of history until a mysterious treasure hoarder shipment was intercepted by the Favonius Knight. That's when Albedo came into contact with the sword. The reason he took such an unusual interest in that old rusty sword is that he recognized the life force as the signature of his master Rhine-daughter. He performed some modifications on it, and then he gave it to us to gather the corruption from Durin and cleanse it with her otherworldly powers. The idea of gathering that purified energy probably came to Albedo when we were fighting the Cryo-Regisvine. Seeing such a complex creature being revived that quickly was an opportunity for him that he could not let pass. As we have already mentioned, Albedo is a homunculus created for the sole purpose of finding the true meaning of this world, and this discovery could actually be the missing piece that he needs to finally fulfill that promise. But it could end up being disastrous for all of Mondstadt. We know from his story quest that Albedo hides a dark secret within him. This energy could be the catalyst needed to unwittingly unleash those dark powers on the people of Mondstadt. I do not believe Albedo is an alchemist, but I think that his curiosity will end up causing quite a big disaster, one of the many that we're going to have to solve in order to keep the people of Teyvat free of danger. This is all I have for you guys today. Thanks a lot for listening until the end. If you liked the video, don't forget to do the usual stuff. I can't express how much it helps us out. We are putting in a lot of effort to continue making these videos, and we hope we can continue to do the same for a long time. Our next video will probably not feature Genshin, and I won't cover it until we get some worthwhile materials in terms of lore. The latest event was rather light in terms of storytelling. It's better to stay back and concentrate our efforts on the truly important stuff. Meanwhile, feel free to check on some of the other stuff that we have on the channel. If you are a fan of ARGs, I have some Catastrophe Crow content that could be of interest. If you're more interested in video game storytelling, I recommend the Does Not Commute series I am making. At the moment, I'm only at part 1. I plan on making part 2 and part 3 soon, so stay tuned for that. See you guys soon. Bye.